Look here at my training that I have been doing the past couple of weeks here in my new split. As I mentioned before in some of my other videos, I am currently doing a push-pull lower split and lifting 6 days per week. So push-pull lower, push-pull lower. And so this is an example of my squats that I did on my lower day, still repping out 315 pounds pretty easily, which is awesome. I have cut back my training that I was doing for powerlifting, so powerlifting specific movements, I've cut those out quite a bit. So currently I'm only back squatting 1 to 2 times per week. Recently what I've been doing, I kind of have a little bit more flexibility kind of in my setup of my training program. Currently I'm front squatting once per week and back squatting once per week. And as you can see here, I've been adding in leg press more. It is an excellent movement to add in. I know it gets some crap in the powerlifting community, but it's an excellent movement to add in. I added it in after squats, so after my main compound movement. And then here are just some glute ham raises, so I actually separate the glute and the ham raise, so I only do ham raise. I don't do the glute raise and then the ham raise. I like to do them separately. And that's just because I feel like I can engage my hamstrings more effectively if I separate them. I feel as though I can't really concentrate on my glute and then my hamstring raise, so I like to separate them. You can do them together. Here is just an example of a exercise that I did after glute ham raises, so this is typically the order that I do, so always compound exercises first. These are split squats with a 2-second eccentric. So something that you can do if you're feeling a little bit bored with your training or you just want to try something new is adding in slower eccentrics. That's just an example of how you can change things up. It doesn't have to be, if you have an effective exercise that you're using that you really like, you don't have to change it just because you feel like, oh, I need something new. Like if you like it, keep it in, and if it's working. So for me, split squats are one of those that I absolutely love for glute and hamstring and quad and just overall leg development. And so I don't switch them out. There's no reason to. I try to progressively increase the weight on those, but just for example, the 2-second eccentric is just something new that I wanted to add in and a little bit more of a challenge. So here is an example of a push day. So I've been getting quite a few questions on my push days because I did make separate YouTube videos on my pull and lower days. So on my push days, I'm starting out with one compound movement. So for me, it's either bench press, flat dumbbell bench press, or incline dumbbell bench press. So here on this day, I decided to do incline dumbbell bench press. It's a little bit tricky for me because I have to see how my shoulder is feeling. My shoulder, I've had a shoulder injury for about almost 4 years now, and it's just something that I have to be mindful of. So an example of being mindful of this, here you can see I'm doing overhead press on the Smith machine. So this allows me to just be very deliberate with what muscles I'm engaging, not put any sort of momentum into it that might lead to some instability for my shoulder. So for example, I replaced those. I did the Smith machine shoulder press as opposed to overhead press because that was a little bit, I felt a little bit unsure about it with my shoulder. So I would much rather be safe than sorry. Here is the next movement I did. It's just standing one arm dumbbell press. I prefer to do these one arm at a time because I like to focus on each arm separately. As you'll notice here, I'm doing lateral raises. I believe this was with 20-pound dumbbells. I do use a little bit of momentum, as I mentioned in some of my other videos. On certain exercises I like to use momentum, other exercises I do not. It really depends just on my weakest part of the lift. So for example, with lateral raises, the weakest that I am is at the bottom of it, and I'm extremely strong at the top once I hit the extension, but I don't want the weight that I'm using to be limited by the first part of the motion. So that's why I do use a little bit of momentum in order to get the weight up there. So as you'll notice for most shoulder exercises, I like to do them unilaterally. I really like to focus on the contraction and each arm's one at a time. I also like to do this for bicep curls. I just find that I can focus more on the exercise when I'm doing it one arm at a time. So for these are rear delt raises just with the cable. I'm not using much weight. I think I'm using about 15 pounds there per arm. And then I moved into face pulls, and I prefer to do face pulls from seated on the ground. I'm able to gain more stability. It's not hard on my back. I'm not trying to balance with the weight. A lot of variations that you see of face pulls are typically done standing, but I prefer to do them seated. You can use a little bit more weight. You can use your leverages to your advantage by being seated on the floor. So then for my push day, I then went into tricep exercises. Here these are just push downs, and then I did overhead tricep extensions that I did not film. So typically a push day for me will be one compound chest exercise and then a couple shoulder exercises followed by isolation exercises, and then if I'm feeling up to it, some BFR. So here I just did BFR overhead press. These are quick release tourniquets. I've talked about BFR in some of my other videos before, but essentially it allows you to hit hypertrophy while using a lower percentage of your 1RM. Thanks, Terry, for that angle. That's great. He zooms in on my butt every single time he films. So the effect for BFR on my shoulders is more of an indirect effect with BFR overhead press, but because it's essentially pulling the blood in your triceps, and then the effect will be indirect for your shoulders. But I just like the way it feels. I really enjoy it, so I like to add it in. And also too, with my shoulder injury, it allows me to add in a bit more volume without heavy taxing loads. So this is actually one day this week that I felt amazing. I added in front squats. So as you guys know, I start with my compound lift. So this is my compound lift. I started out with 205 pounds for sets of 8 on fronts. I did 2 sets of that, and then here this is 225 pounds. This is a new PR, guys. I hit 225 pounds on front squats for a set of 6. Now I know my form isn't perfect, I'm working on it, but I am super pumped because this is an all-time PR, even though I'm at about 10 pounds lower body weight the last time I hit a new PR on front squats, which I believe last time it was like 225 by 4. So pretty dang good, right? New body weight PR. So who says you necessarily have to get weaker on all accounts during a cut and losing weight? So also too, I'm pretty pumped about the fact that I hit a new PR on front squats because I've only started adding them back in about 3 weeks ago. Here is just leg press. So I did this after front squats. I'm showing these in order of typically how I do them, so I don't want to wear myself out with leg press before I front squat. That would not be a good idea because front squats require a lot of stability and a lot of just overall energy expenditure on all fronts, my back, my legs, my everything. So I like to do fronts first. This was hip thrusts, and I felt incredible. I don't know what it was this day. I don't know if it was my pre-workout meal, I don't know if it was the energy, I don't know if it was my prayers before my workout, but I felt amazing. So 315 pounds I actually ended up doing for 5 sets of 12 reps, I believe. And I do these from a bit of an elevated box, and the reason I do this is because if I had them on the ground, I would not be able to fit my body underneath them. So that helps with just getting in a good position. Then I moved on to split squats. As you'll notice here, these are just normal speed split squats. So as I mentioned before, I added in 1 day of tempo split squats before, and these were just normal speed with a bit more weight. So if you're doing tempo, typically you'll use a bit less weight. And if you're doing just regular speed, then you'll be able to utilize a bit more weight in that circumstance. So, but for that day, I believe I was using 65 or 60-pound dumbbells in each, or on one side. And then on the tempo day, I was using about 40 pounds. So here I'm just giving an example of showing how I set up. Anytime you do a compound lift or some sort of really any lift that you're doing, you want to make sure you're even. So notice how much time I spent making sure my feet were even, making sure the bar was even. You'll also notice the same thing on leg press. I spend quite a bit of time making sure I'm even, my feet are even, because the last thing I want to do is to be off center and tweak something because of a silly mistake and not paying attention. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look at my training, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye!